while wading knee-deep in swamp water. The thrill of chancing upon a plant in flower will never be forgotten. The setting will be replete with buttressed custard apple trees, stilted above the water, spreading their low, arcing boughs, bedecked with mirage of epiphytic plants. Down low on the trunk, the familiar spidery network of rambling green roots will not be hard to find. Should one be lucky enough to see a flower, all else will seem eclipsed. There, caught hovering in midair, will be a fantastic, fairy-like ghost, frozen in flight.
This is my journey for my final project to learn all about the ghost orchid's origins, its discovery, and the type of environments it requires to survive at. And also to learn about what has made it an endangered species and why its numbers have declined. So let's go.
Awake. Shake dreams from your hair, my pretty child, my sweet one. Choose the day and choose the sign of your day, the day's divinity. First thing you see.
I'm just now passing through the Big Cypress National Preserve, Big Cypress Swamp here in north of the Everglades. On my way to the Fakahatchee Strand to meet with Mike Owen. He's a biologist there who is in charge of mainly collecting data relating to the distribution, survival, and reproductive habits of many plants and animals in South Florida. So Owen's been there since 1994, and after a few phone calls and email exchanges, he was kind enough to meet with me and discuss further this most elusive and mysterious plant, the ghost orchid.
Choose, they croon, the ancient ones, the time has come again. Choose now, they croon, beneath the moon, beside an ancient lake. Enter again the sweet forest, enter the hot dream, come with us.
I'm here with Mike Owen, a biologist here at the Fakahatchee Strand. I came to ask him a few questions regarding the ghost orchid. Mr. Owen was kind enough to meet with me for this project for FIU Ecology of South Florida lab class. And I thank you for your time, Mr. Owen.
Sure.
Thank you very much. I understand that the ghost orchid was first found in Cuba around 1844.
Yes, that's quite a while ago now. Before it was ever found here in Florida, it was Cuba first.
And what year was it found here in Florida?
I think it was the late 1800s, 1870s or 1880s.
Was it common before?
I've asked that of some people that were here, even 40, 50, or 60 years ago, and they usually just say that they were never very common, but they used to be a little bit more like locally abundant. Just patches where you'd see maybe 50 here or maybe even 100 there. Whereas now today, I don't usually see 50 or 100. I might see 10 or 20 in a group.
And so I guess it's safe to say that ever since you became aware of it and started studying, it was already endangered?
Right. It is listed as endangered on the state list for Florida.
And why is that? How has it become so decreased?
Well, probably habitat loss, just habitat destruction, also the drainage of wetlands or of swamps, because the water really does help protect these tropical epiphytes like ghost orchids by having that humidity in the swamp. It actually elevates that dew point above freezing, so it keeps it from freezing as long as they're just a few feet above water in a slough. So as long as they're in a hammock or in a strand, especially with a slough, on a pop ash or a pond apple, or in case of a hammock, they can even be on oak trees. But there's a lot of water, a lot of humidity that can saturate that air and keep that dew point above freezing. Also, that hammock or the canopy of the strands helps to hold in the humidity during the dry times. March, April, and May, we get a lot of hot, desiccating wind and sun. So the canopy plays a big important role at that time. Also, these strand swamps are like limestone valleys, and they're filled with muck. It's thousands of years of needles and leaves dropping every winter to create that spongy material. And that wicks moisture up even during droughts. Through capillary action, it keeps it very humid, even in the sloughs and the hammocks for that matter. So humidity is in winter. It stays wet so long, it doesn't have a chance to evaporate or dry out or compact or combust. It doesn't have a chance to burn.
And
It stays wet.
and that's beneficial for the ghost orchid. That type of environment.
Water's the key, and a good canopy. And they need the right kind of fungus. That's always the key to mycorrhizal fungi.
What about poaching?
Poaching is a fairly big problem because we only have so many ghost orchids, and if you lose 1, 2, or 3 tree by poaching, that can make a pretty big hit. Because one plant can make a lot of flowers over the lifetime, maybe 10 or 20 years if it's an adult. That can make a lot of flowers, and some of them make a lot of seed pods over the course of, say, 5, 10 years. So the loss of one plant can mean the loss of a lot of seeds or a lot of young plants later.
And why do people poach? Because it seems like it needs such a harsh environment to survive. What could you possibly do with it if you poached it? I mean, can you put it in the backyard?
I doubt it. The ghost orchids are very sensitive. I've even seen some of them die after the canopy breaks, after a hurricane. Too much sun comes. Some of them have died after that. So even in their natural habitat where they're not even being moved, they're very sensitive to change. So I think a ghost orchid just gets used to the place where it grew up in. It's very sensitive. I tell people you can't even look at them wrong.
So I just had to ask that because I understand that they're very very hush hush. I myself wanted to inquire about where one was, and I practically had to pull teeth just to get a nod. But
sure. We are all very secret about exact locations of ghost orchids because you just never know. If somebody takes somebody who takes somebody, so you never know who's going to take something. So we're all very careful about that, and it's not because we're just thinking that it might happen. We see it happen. We do know that poaching has occurred. So we have to get really careful. That's why we have to put up cameras, just to kind of monitor ghost orchid populations, but only if there's been poaching. We don't put up cameras everywhere. It's only where there's been illegal collecting of ghost orchids or other endangered plants. So it's merely a response to poaching.
right, and what is the population now?
Well, in the 21 years that I've been here as park biologist, a privileged job here at Tallahassee, we have a group of about a dozen of us have found somewhere in the neighborhood of 370 ghost orchids in 21 years.
In 21 years, 371.
Yeah.
Wow. What about in the 80s or prior to that?
They may have been a little more common. It's just hard to say. There really isn't a long-term monitoring. Now that we're restoring hydrology, the Everglades is being restored. We're even plugging canals on our west boundary at Vicky and Strand State Forest. The water table will come up a little bit, several inches. The hydro period will be a little longer, more approaching what it was historically. That's a good thing because water is everything for these plants. Epiphytes never know when they're going to come across a drought. So as long as there's a little bit longer hydro period, a little moisture, the muck can absorb it like a sponge. And so even during dry times, it can pick it up. So water is the key. Water, canopy, muck, limestone valley, very general slope of South Florida, mycorrhizal fungi, and then of course the pollinator. So there's so many things that is involved to have any orchid survive in the wild.
Do they always bloom in season?
Well, here at Fakahatchee, most of I would say more than 90% of our ghost orchids bloom in the months of June, July, and August. I do have a couple individuals that will bloom in April, and maybe 2 that will bloom in May, occasionally. And then I have maybe 2 or 3 others that will bloom in September. So basically, April through September is the primary, but June, July, and August is their favorite time here for blooming. But there have been other months of the year for other ghost orchids, but I just haven't seen them at Fakahatchee. It's been April through September.
I have to ask, this plant seems so elusive and so mysterious. I read online that it blooms during the high mosquito season. Is this is this something that it is this part of its mystery, its elusiveness to bloom in a season where it's like the plant is saying, oh, if you want to come get me or you want to come see me, you have to go through.
You'll pay the price.
You're going to pay the price.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think you're onto something. The ghost orchid is elusive. That's a good way to describe it. Also, I call it the Rocky Dangerfield of orchids. It gets no respect. 50 weeks doesn't have that flower, or 51 weeks. But for about 10 days, when it does bloom, it steals the ball. So it's like the Cinderella.
Wow.
So that's kind of why the ghost orchid for me has always been my favorite. Because it gets no respect for about 51 weeks, and then for 1 week it steals the show. So Cinderella, Rocky Dangerfield. All it is roots. There's no leaves, but it moved its chlorophyll into its roots. So that's pretty cool. A plant that doesn't even need leaves, that's advanced. It's photosynthetic roots, basically.
Wow.
And then when it blooms, makes that beautiful leaping frog, ballerina, Fu Manchu mustache-shaped flower. It bounces in the rain. It's really cool. I've seen them in rainstorms. The raindrop will hit it, it'll just keep bouncing.
Wow.
It's incredible.
And where did you get the name Ghost Orchid?
Well, I think it's because it's all white, and it's just a manifestation of this root, it's these massive roots. And it is ephemeral or ethereal, you know. It's almost see-through. It's white with a little bit of green. And the ghost orchid blooms day and night for about maybe 7 to 12 days, depending on the plant. But at night is when it emits more of its odor. And that odor is a very clean smelling odor that attracts this moth, the giant sphinx moth, which is it's the only known pollinator of the ghost orchid. And they dubbed it the flying tongue because the wingspan of the giant sphinx moth is 6 inches. The proboscis is 6 1/4 inches. So this thing is flying all over the swamp at night trying to feed on nectar from usually very light colored, usually white flowers. I've seen them on pine lilies and especially on moonflowers, big large white morning glories at night. And I've yet to see them on the ghost orchid, but we do know they've been documented that. And when they put that proboscis down the nectar spur to get that really rich high carbohydrate nectar, which is like jet fuel, that giant sphinx moth, it then gets the polonium stuck somewhere on its mouth parts, and then when it pulls out, that's how it gets stuck. The next time it goes to another flower, if it's a crime lily or morning glory, it won't get pulled off. But if it goes to another ghost orchid, that polonium will get stuck or unstuck and pulled off under the anther cap. Wow. And that's what cross-fertilizes one flower to another. Wow. So it's the only known pollinator is a giant sphinx moth.
Wow, right, because no other species has such a long
the proboscis.
Wow.
Yes. There's been one case, somebody told me that they saw a ghost orchid during the day was visited by a giant swallowtail butterfly. And it has a long proboscis. So that's another option. We don't know, but we do know the giant sphinx moth for sure is one of the pollinator. It's the only known pollinator. But the giant swallowtail butterfly may be an alternate.
How big or small do they grow?
There's a big size difference, actually. Some of the smaller ones might only be about 1.5 inches or maybe 2 inches long, and maybe 1 inch wide. Some of the bigger ones that I've seen can be almost hand-sized, maybe 3 or 3.5 inches long, and maybe about 1.5 to 2 inches wide, and a long nectar spur. So there's quite a bit of variation. I think the bigger plants usually make a little bit larger flower, but there's some variation there too. And also, if a plant makes a lot of flowers at the same time, those flowers are usually not as big. But again, there's some variation. Some plants can make fairly big flowers and still make 2, 3, or 4 of them. The super ghost makes a lot of flowers. They're pretty good size. They're not big, but they're not really tiny either. They're good size, average size flowers at least, but it's an above average number, 12 or more at the same time. I know of no other ghost orchid that can do that. So we started calling it the super ghost. That's the one that's about 45 feet above ground in a big old world cypress tree at Corkscrew Swamp Audubon Sanctuary. It produces flowers every year. It doesn't just stick to June, July, and August. It'll bloom, I think, March through November.
Wow, and is that one open to the public?
Yes, Corkscrew Swamp Audubon Society. You can pay to go on the boardwalk there and see it. Usually they have a spotting scope. But if not, you can bring your binoculars. They'll tell you about where it is. It's really high. It's 45 feet high, so it's safe.
Wow, that's amazing. I heard about a project, and correct me if I'm wrong, where about 1,000 cigar or cowhorn orchids were being planted around to help regenerate its population. Is that something you guys would do with the ghost orchid, or have there been attempts to regenerate the species by planting it around,
I guess. Well, we have done that with the cowhorn orchid, Pseudopodia punctatum, or cigar orchid. We've been working with Atlanta Botanical Gardens and also with FIU on a collaborative project to kind of restore that species or that population to Fakahatchee. And we have put out, I think, about 800 now. Our survival rate is somewhere around 75–80%. It's very high so far. We never know. Once they go through some droughts, we might lose some here and there. But we have put them in lots of different areas throughout Fakahatchee, and we go back each year to document the survival of them. We don't even know how long it takes to go from seedling to a bloom plant. It could be 10, 15 years. We really don't know.
Wow.
But we do have that project going. We haven't really thought about doing that with the ghost orchid just yet because there are a good number of ghost orchids in Fakahatchee and even more ghost orchids in the Big Cypress National Preserve. So they seem to be hanging in there. As long as we continue to restore the water, then they should do just fine. It's humidity, protect them from frost. Also, the swamps protect them from fire. And law enforcement can help us protect them from, poaching because they are endangered, at least on the state list. So, people are learning that. They also know that they just don't survive. So it's not even worth the risk to do it. We tell people, we invite people, go find them, take a GPS point, take notes, take pictures, and come and tell people about them, especially those of us that work at these places. That's how I find some of the ghost stories. People come and tell me, and they give me the GPS coordinates, or I go back out with them another time a few weeks later, and they show me a population they find, and it's great, and I say, all right, good, I'll come back here once a year in the summer, and we'll document them, and sometimes we go together. So that's how we can find them. So people that want to help us learn more about what's going on with the ghost story thing in the swamp, GPS is a very important tool for us, as well as digital cameras or just notes. So we love people to go out and explore and find and document and just enjoy it, and then pass that on to their next generation.
That's great. Mr. Owen, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. It was a
Nice to
pleasure.
meet you.
Like I was telling you earlier, you know, what you do here is wonderful and amazing. And
Well, I consider it a privilege to be the biologist here at Fat Stream.
the privilege is mine having met you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.